Hi everyone, welcome to the Getting Started tutorial for Metareal Stage. So today we're going to take a look, first of all, quick overall view of the interface, take you through the different sections of the application and what they're used for. After that we're going to take a look at the photography guidelines and basically understand what are the specific requirements for shooting virtual tours for Metareal Stage and how to get the most out of it. And then we'll take a detailed look at the various steps of the tour editing workflow and how we recommend that you use the application. And then after that we'll take a deep dive into the room editor, which is where we do the 3D construction, converting the panoramas back into 3D spaces, and then the tour editor, which is where we assemble the reconstructed rooms into a virtual tour and control the presentation options for the resulting virtual tour. And finally we'll look at the publishing options and all the different publishing targets and the steps you can go through to put your tour online once it's been reconstructed. So this is the project dashboard, and when you log into your account this is what you end up. You can also access it from the Stage menu in the main menu up here on the top right. In fact, from this menu we've got access to tutorials, reference, announcements. We've got the Stage menu, this project dashboard, your usage page where you can see what your account usage is, the billing page where you can actually access your billing and payments, the integrations and SDK page, and if you're on an enterprise account you'll also have the team management page and you can log out. The project dashboard, you have two basic ways to look at your projects, either as thumbnails or as a list view. And each project has a variety of attributes. You can also create your own attributes. So for example, if you want to assign projects to different users in a team account, you can do that. You can also decide which attributes you're going to see. You can add permanent filters to your view, and custom attributes will show up in the filter list so that whenever you come back to your account you can have a view filtered by, for example, the projects that have an attribute with your name in it. Up the top here, link to this video tutorial, install the sample project, and if you get, maybe sometimes in a support situation we'll need to send you a project package to upload, you'll be able to do that here. So let's open a project so we can look at that in a bit more detail. I've held down Control and pressed the link in order to open the project in a new tab. This makes it easier, much faster to switch between the different areas of the project. You can get away with probably 4 or 5 Metareal Stage tabs open at once. And so now we've opened the project dashboard for this particular project, and we can see it contains all the different elements of the virtual tour as we construct them. So we start by uploading our panoramas, and they appear here as thumbnails. Then we can select panoramas and use them to make a new room, so to do a 3D reconstruction of a room using the new room tool. Actually I've got the rooms already constructed here, so I'm just going to control click on one of the rooms, opening another tab, and this takes me to the room editor. And the room editor is where we do all the 3D reconstruction. So there's a tool panel on the left here for the different tools we need to do 3D reconstruction. On the far left of that there's the thumbnail list of the panoramas that are in the room. I can add new panoramas and I can delete the panoramas. And basically what I'm going to be doing here is relating the panoramas together in space and adding any volumes, any 3D volumes I want to my room to make sure that the 3D navigation works properly. Over on the right here we have a contextual helper panel which provides additional parameters and interface elements for each of the tools here. At the top we can show or hide the different visual guides that you can rely on to do the 3D reconstruction. And we have a couple of other views. This is the main panorama view. We also have a plan view, which is very useful for some of the alignment and registration operations. And we have a leveling view, which makes it easier to see if panoramas are actually properly level or not. So I'm going to close that. And once we've created all our rooms, so we go through and do that, we open the tour editor, and again I've opened that with a control click to open it in a new tab. And once the tour editor is open, we can see it's got a similar layout to the room editor, but here what we're doing is assembling the rooms. So the left panel shows the list of rooms into the tour. So I'm actually just going to drag this out, and it should snap into place because it's got doors. So basically doors are the connection points between rooms, and when we built all our rooms we snap them together into a tour. This one's actually organized into 2 floors. We've got a variety of different views. This is the plan view. We've also got a model view which shows us the 3D model that we've created and how that's all related together. And I can actually go here and switch on the navigation map, which shows us the navigation that the user is going to make when they move around the tour in 3D. And here, by clicking on a navigation link, I can see the kind of transition I'm going to do between the 2 panoramas. I can also click on the panoramas and see which images any individual panorama is connected to. I can also go to the preview. Now the preview is the view in the tour editor that shows us what the visitor to the tour, the end user, is going to see. So we can see the tour player interface, the different views that we're going to present to the end user. You can hide and show the various different interface elements, or measuring tools. We can also, over here, we've got a helper panel which allows us to set all the publishing parameters for the tour. So we can set the tour starting point, we can decide which view the tour is going to start in, we can show or hide the various tour interface components. In fact, we can get rid of them altogether if we want. We can also set the range of field of view, set a title and location, add a custom logo to the tour, add a custom thumbnail to the tour, and also set a nadir logo if we want to set a nadir logo. Finally, we can then, once our tour is all ready, we can publish it, and once published, the link to the published tour will appear here. So before we get deep into how to build a virtual tour using Metareal, let's step back a little bit and take a look at some of the recommended best practices for shooting tours to get the most out of the platform. One of the first things to be aware of when you're using Metareal is that, unlike other 3D virtual tour platforms, you can use any camera you like. That is, any 360 camera, any DSLR, as long as you're able to make a reasonably geometrically accurate equirectangular image, you can use that to build a 3D tour and do 3D reconstruction in Metareal. In terms of shooting, it's also very flexible. You don't need to shoot a specific number of panoramas with a specific density. You can basically, as long as you shoot a single panorama for each enclosed space and enough panoramas to connect those panoramas together by line of sight, you can create a virtual tour. It's really about how many navigation points you want your users to have. Of course, if you want to add a few more points, you want to have a bit more navigation, you can shoot more panoramas. And indeed, if you have large spaces or there's lots of occlusion in the space, you can actually go further and shoot maybe, even 4 or 5 panoramas in each room. But the baseline is that you need to have line of sight between the panoramas. They rarely need to be closer than 5 meters together. And you need a minimum of 1 panorama per enclosed space. Okay, so let's now take a look at the tour creation workflow in a bit more detail. So in order to build virtual reality ready 3D virtual tours that work on the web as well as in VR headsets using Metareal Stage, there's a certain sequence of steps that we need to follow. Obviously, first of all, we start by uploading the panoramas to the Metareal service, and then we need to create and do a 3D reconstruction process, and basically creating rooms from each of the enclosed spaces in your panorama. Once you've reconstructed all your rooms as 3D objects, you can then assemble them into a virtual tour by connecting them together. You can then finalize the tour user interface with all the different presentation options that you want to have, any logos or nadir patches you want to add, and then you can share it with clients. Now, obviously, there's a certain amount of investment involved in learning the tools. It'll probably take you a couple of weeks to come up to speed in all, although you can build your first tour probably in the first couple of hours. Once you're up to speed, it shouldn't take you more than 45 minutes to an hour to build a sort of average size tour. On the other hand, if you'd prefer not to make the time investment to learn how to use the tool and do all that by yourself, you can always upload the panoramas and then submit the job to our production team with any custom instructions, and we'll build a tool for you and send it back to you, and you can share it with your clients. Obviously, there is an additional fee for this production work, which you can find on our pricing page on the website. So let's now take a detailed look at the room editor and the actual process of doing 3D reconstruction using Metareal Stage. Before I dive into the user interface, I want to go a quick overview of the steps we're going to take once we've chosen our panoramas and created our room. The first thing to do once the room editor is open is to choose a reference panorama. This is the panorama that we use to align and anchor all the other panoramas in the room. So we need to align it to the world grid and level it. It's very important for accurate reconstruction in Metareal Stage to have very level panoramas. Finally, we draw the floor outline and we level the remaining panos in the room, and we snap those panos to the floor outline we drew against the reference panorama. So let's go back to our project dashboard, and I'm just going to select a couple of panos. We're going to do a simple room for this getting started tutorial. If you'd like to see a more in-depth reconstruction of a more complex room, the room here, the double height room with the staircase, is actually the subject of a recent webinar, and you can find that on our YouTube channel. So for now, I'm going to select probably these two panorama room, and I'm going to go click New Room while holding down Control so that I open the new tab. And while that loads, all right, so now we've got our 2 panoramas loaded into the room editor. And we can see on the left here, they've got the black lines. This means that they're not actually included in the room reconstruction yet. They haven't been located. So the first thing we need to do is choose which is going to be the best reference pano. In this case, I think I want to go for the one closer to the door, just to make sure the door connection alignment's good. So I'm going to make that reference. Ordinarily, you probably want to choose a pano closer to the center of the room to sort of minimize the distance to all the different points. Also, choosing one that allows you to see as many room corners as possible can be helpful. So now what I'm doing is I'm dragging the red line to align the room to the world grid. This makes sure that when we use the snapping and right angles tools later for reconstruction, that everything is much faster and easier to use. Next, I'm going to draw some level lines. Now we do have an automatic leveling tool, however it is currently still rather experimental. So I would recommend using 1 or 2 level lines, particularly for this kind of environment where there's a fair amount of sort of general objects and things kind of making it quite cluttered. If it was an empty room with just walls and so on, we might find that the auto leveling would work quite well. But in this case, we've actually drawn 3 level lines, and now so we can be sure that our room is very, very level. And in fact, the reason we level panoramas, even when they're leveled using a camera measurement unit, is because those measurement units tend to be not particularly accurate. So in order to make sure that our panoramas are extremely level, and so that the construction, 3D reconstruction works very well, we do our own very precise leveling. And in fact, I'll nudge that a smidgen. All right, so I think we're good there. We're going to go to the draw tool, and now the next step is to start drawing out the floor profile. Now I've clicked down using the draw tool, and now I've got a little protractor here. On the top left we can see we've got show and hide for the protractors. We've also got snap options, and in fact I'm going to hit the 1 key to switch on the snap, and you'll notice I'm drawing inside the skirting board where the actual plane of the wall is, and that's because I want my walls to be where the wall really is and not just a few centimetre or so in front of the wall. And now I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to use the 2 protractor instead of the 1, so I'm using the 2 key to find that point there. And now I'm going to pick up, using the escape key to cancel the pick session. Now I'm going to pick up these 2 and put that one in there. And so we've now got our wall profile. I can click on any one of the ceiling edges and raise that up to the right height for the ceiling, and we've got our room reconstructed. Next thing I'm going to do very quickly is just drop in a couple of elements. In this case, switching off snap, windows for the room, and I'm also going to just draw in a volume for this piece of furniture. Again, using snap to make sure it's absolutely at right angles. And these will help with the alignment of the next panorama. So I'm going to click on the second panorama now. And the first thing I want to do with that panorama is level it. So draw level line. I don't need to align it to the world grid. That'll happen as I do the snapping. So there's 1. Lots of nice clean lines here. Let's pick one out from the window. I tend to use windows for leveling rather than plaster lines, because windows tend to be more level, more accurate than plaster for some reason. Okay, so now we know we've got a level room. Now we've got 2 options for snapping. So we've done the draw tool. I'm moving on to the snap tool, and I want to snap this panorama to the floor profile we drew in this panorama, which we can see is not in the right place. You'll see how the position of the piece of furniture actually helps us understand what the orientation of our panorama is. We've got 2 modes. We've got snap mode and we've got interactive mode. I'm going to show you both of them. So I'm going to start with snap mode. So I pick a floor point on the 3D wireframe, and I snap it to the point in the panorama where I think it needs to go. And we do that a couple of times, just with 2 points. Should never need more than 2 points. If I use more than 2 points, it'll be that it'll actually solve. I'm actually going to click another point here, and then I'm going to take this point off, because this is a bit further away, give me a slightly better angle on the furniture there so I can see what I'm getting at. And this one's a little bit too far back, so we can move that up. So that basically, you get the idea for that, and we can see our furniture is pretty much in the right place. You can see our walls are pretty much in the right place, so that's pretty good. If I go back to the panorama view, you'll now see that we actually have a 3D model, and we can move around it. So we've already got our basic 3D model constructed. Now what I'm going to do is just insert some more volumes for the bed. I'll do that a bit short and bring it forwards once I've got the height right. So now I can lift that. And it's better with these kind of things, particularly with these kind of rounded objects, to make them a little bit smaller than the object they're representing, so that you don't get kind of strange overhang. So there's my bed, and I'm going to draw a little cylinder here, lift that into place. It looks a bit big, so I'll shrink it down. I'll put it there. I'm going to Control-C, Control-V it, so I can now lift up a second panorama, just the second one there, and I'm going to pull that down to about there, and then lift up a third one up to the top there, pull it out to the size of the lamp, maybe down a little bit, and then shrink it some so that it sort of fits the lamp quite well. And these don't need to be exactly precise. So now what I can do is I can select those three, and then the last one, so I Control-C, Control-V it. If I click along the top there, I can now go and move it into position over there. And just to see how well that fits, we're going to zoom over here. See, we're a little bit out of place, so I'm just going to click those three again and position it where I want it. Come back over here, and that's pretty good. So we've basically got our room constructed in 3D. We've got a few more elements to add. There's a cupboard here, so we're going to create a door on the wall there, take off snap, and I'm going to make it closed and sliding. And then we've got a door here. We know this is bedroom 2, so I'm going to actually hopefully be able to position the door that I already drew in the hallway. So if I go to here, stairs, bedroom 2, place door, and I'm just going to rotate the handle so it's facing the right way for this handle. And so that's now the same door placed in both rooms, which means the rooms will snap together automatically when I place them in the tour. We're going to call this bedroom 2. And that's pretty much it for that. I just want to, the other thing I wanted to do, which we'll go back and do now, is go back to the second panorama, and we're going to show you snapping with the other snapping utility, the interactive tool. So if I click on that, it'll actually get rid of the original snapping, because they're two totally different techniques. And we can see we're now in a plan view, because the interactive snapping tool only works in the plan view. So now what I do is I move my panorama to my wireframe. So I've got that about there, and then I can rotate it, and I set the pivot point. Well, I'll set it to the point I just moved, and I'm going to drag this guy all the way around to here, and we can see we've got it pretty much in the right place already. So if I go back to panorama view, we can see that was very quick as well. So both techniques are pretty fast, and there's our room. So let's go back to our project dashboard, and now we can see that the new room is added to the room list. I'm going to go to the tour editor, again control click to open the tour editor, and we can see here we open the tour editor on the plan view. It's got a similar layout to the room editor, except here what we're doing on the left, we have the list of rooms rather than the list of thumbnails, and we can see that we've already dragged out some of these rooms in this tour, and they've already been assembled together. I'm actually going to click to the first floor and take the bedroom and drop it on the tour, and you can see that it snaps into place. And if I go now to the model view, we can see it says some rooms haven't been processed yet, and we can see that room is still missing. So I'm going to hit the processing button up here, which is flashing to indicate that there's some processing to be done. And in a few seconds, we'll see the new room that we just created has been added to the tour. Now, one of the things we can do in both the plan view and the model view is look at the navigation map. This is the connections between the panoramas that the user is going to be able to follow when they're navigating around the tour. And we can actually look at these and click on them, and you can see on the panel on the right the two panoramas that are connected and the kind of transition between the panoramas. Now in this case it's a travel transition. If I had sort of disconnected spaces, or I want to be able to go through a closed door, for example, we can always switch to a teleport transition, and that will just, instead of sliding through space between the points, what will happen then is it'll jump and instantaneously teleport from one point to the other. We can of course add and remove individual connections. So for example, I don't want the viewer of the tour to be able to fly through the table and the chair here. I can just click to delete a connection, and if I want to add a connection back, I can just click on a panorama and hit the connect to button. I'm not going to do that right now, to actually add one back. So that's pretty much ready. We're just going to go now to the preview mode. So there's the three views in the tour editor: the plan view where we assemble the rooms and create the floors, the model view where we can edit the connections and see what the 3D model looks like, and also the preview. where we can actually see the final tour that the end user is going to see, experience it in the same way. And we can also control all the publishing and presentation options for the tour. The one other thing we can do in the preview mode is we can add notations. So here I can add a label, and I can television, and in fact we can add anything. This text box text field here can handle any rich text, so you can paste text from, for example, Google Docs with fonts and images, and you can align it, so you can paste it in there. We can also add a links to external web content, so we can actually have a link out to an external site from the labels. The other thing we can do is we can browse and add a custom SVG icon for the label icon, and there's no need to have text. In fact, you can just have a label icon that's a link if you want. I'm just gonna delete that now. So the other things we can do, we can set the tour starting point. So we want the tour to start at the entrance of the house. We can set that here and then click set to make that the opening panorama of the tour. We can choose whether to start in the tour view or the model view, and a variety of other settings, including the tour thumbnail, the Nadir logo, and also the title, location, and the top right logo for the branding for the tour. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the tour editor. The next thing we can do is publish our tour. So we can either hit the publish button here, or we can head back to our project dashboard and we can hit publish here. And we've got a variety of different options we can choose depending on the platform and the subscription license that you're using. We're going to look at WebGL now. So when we hit publish, what happens is we create a new published version for the tour, and that fires off the publishing process on the server. And what we do during the publish is we bake all the textures, we get everything ready to make sure the tour is as optimized as possible and as efficient as possible when you run that. So now if I click on the published version, it'll open a new window, and this is our completed published tour. So now I can move around and we can go take a look at the room that we just built. So there we are, we're in our tour and we're able to navigate around. We got a number of views, and these correspond to the views that we selected as options. We can change the floors. We could have a room chooser if we wanted, which allowed us to switch between rooms directly. And we can use things like the measure tools, so we can measure doors and things like that. If you're on a WebVR compatible platform, clicking the VR icon will allow you to display the tour directly in VR. So I'm just going to close that. Now the tour itself has a URL. If you want to make changes to your tour and publish to the same URL, you can do that using the refresh button here. If you want to take your tour offline for any reason but keep the link and keep the tour available, you can actually unpublish it briefly and re-enable it here. And we also have an embed code, which is available here. You can just cut and paste the embed code and use that to embed your tour in a web page. So that's about it for now. Thanks very much.